Well, Colts Nation, there it is, right there. I told you we have a heavyweight fight on our hands. Now, I'm sorry, of course, I'm a little delayed on this video. I understand. I was in Atlantic City over the weekend, and I found out about Taylor's trade request literally in a casino, okay? So I tried to get to this. I tried to think through it as much as I possibly can, just because of how complex of an issue this is. You ever hear the saying that, when you want the truth of something, I don't know if this is the exact saying. If you want the truth, you listen to this guy's side and you listen to that guy's side. The truth is somewhere in the middle, right? This is not a black and white issue. There's a gray area here, and that's really where the truth lies. And the last episode I did was met with a lot of disagreement. And by the way, I welcome the disagreement here, okay? I am not mad at anyone for disagreeing with me. I say on this channel all the time that I am here to further the discussion, right? This channel isn't just about me spouting off my opinions into an echo chamber. This is about creating a community of Colts fans who are trying to have some good discussion around this team, right? But the issue that I am having, much like rest of Colts media, is that there are so many different angles to take, and there are so many moving parts in this JT contract negotiation that I'm having a tough time articulating exactly where I stand and presenting all sides of this issue while also expressing to you my opinions. Does that make sense? It's not an easy thing to do, particularly live to recording in front of a camera, right? I don't have the option to type it up and edit it and then come back and the whole deal. Now I could redo my take a million times, but I also have a life to live here. So I am going to try to best give my take all the way through. All I ask out of you is that if you're going to get in the comments, I take the time to read everyone's comments and I take the time to answer many. So if you're going to come into the comment section with something super detailed, disagreeing with me, go ahead. I welcome it. But I do ask that if you're going to do that, I want to make sure you have my point straight and I want to make sure you've thoroughly listened to this video before you go ahead and do that. Is that a fair proposition? If I'm going to take the time for you, take time out of my day, you got to take the time for me. Is that fair? All right, because I do feel, for starters, that as fans, on some level, we have failed to support JT the way we should. Now, of course, he's wrong, right? In many, many ways. I understand that. And I understand he just turned heel on the organization. But that doesn't mean as fans, we had to turn on him completely. I feel that we have failed to be fair to Jonathan Taylor on some level. I understand the business of this very, very much. Not completely. I'm not some sort of brainiac when it comes to the business of the NFL, but I understand he's due $4.3 million. I understand contractually the Colts can see out this season, franchise him next season, and the season after that. And, that might make good business sense. I'm going to refer to a tweet I saw by Tony Dungy. Check this out right here. He's talking about the Edgar and James situation when he was the coach. He says Egderin was worth every penny he was paid by the Cardinals that year. Of course, he was with the Cardinals after he left the Indianapolis Colts after his second contract. Keep that in mind. But his second contract, after 7 years, I believe his 8th season, he ended up with the Cardinals. Continuing with Dungy now. We went with Joseph Adai and Dominic Rhodes and got 1,722 yards rushing from them. We saved a ton of money and used those savings to sign Dwight Freeney, Reggie Wayne, and Dallas Clark to long-term deals. It's an economic reality of the NFL. Now, I am not at all disputing what Tony Dungy is saying. When you guys say that that's the reality of the situation, I am not disputing that at all. But I think there's more of a discussion to be had here, and I think on some levels, JT needs someone to defend him or at least bring up his side of things, because this isn't all just about Jonathan Taylor being a bad guy. This is also on Irsay too. So what we're going to cover in the episode today is I'm going to talk about where JT is wrong, because I feel like I didn't cover that enough in the last episode. The comment section, obviously disagreeing with me. I'm not going to backpedal off of what I said. I'll never do that. I would love everyone to like me, of course, but I'm not going to backpedal and not tell the truth or what I believe to be the truth just so people are going to like me. At the end of the day, if you don't like my videos because you disagree with my opinion, that is your problem, not mine. I'm sure I'll get plenty of other people along the way, but I want to talk about where Jonathan Taylor is wrong. I want to talk about where Jim Irsay is wrong, and then I want to talk again about the reality of running back pay and my issue with the perception around it. So we're going to get into it. But before we do, I just want to introduce myself. If you're catching me for the first time, very possible this is the first big Colts story. Basically, I don't know, since last season, Anthony Richardson, really, right? My name's Justin. This is the Ride in the Bench Colts cast. I talk about the Colts constantly. And yeah, if at any point you're enjoying it, go ahead, shoot it a like. You can subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. I will be at training camp this upcoming week. Probably won't be seeing Jonathan Taylor in action. Thankfully, we'll probably be seeing Anthony Richardson in action. So if you want to see my takeaways from that when the time comes, feel free to subscribe. So let's start with where Jonathan Taylor is wrong. And I want to just get one thing out of the way, the elephant in the room. Jonathan Taylor's agent should be fired. The guy is clearly an absolute bozo. Now, and I know he has worked with many reputable players and athletes and things of that nature, but that doesn't mean anything. This guy clearly does not know a lick about how this type of thing is going to get done in the NFL, right? So for all the bad things I say about Irsay, this is also the truth on Taylor's side of things, right? His agent, by the way, I forget his name. Doesn't matter. I don't want to know his name. I want nothing to do with the guy. But he also represented John Jones. For those of you who don't know the UFC, John Jones is considered widely to be the greatest heavyweight, or rather the greatest fighter of all time in the UFC by most people, realistically. And despite the fact that that John Jones didn't have this guy as his agent at the time, he sat out for 3 years after being mentored and essentially having this agent in his ear. Sat out for 3 years of the UFC and came back not getting the money that he wanted, okay? So this guy, as far as that goes, in my opinion, doesn't really understand how to negotiate business. That's for starters, okay? Now I'm going to address the obvious. This is very, very bad timing on JT's part. I could talk all day about the 1,800-yard season. At the end of the day, last year, we were 4-12-1. JT was not only injured, but he had some bad turnovers at bad times, okay? We have a new coaching regime coming in here, a rookie quarterback, and this team has been in turmoil for Lord knows how long. JT was the only thing we could rely on. So for me, the timing is just nonsensical. It's horrific, but again, I blame the agent because think about where Taylor was now a month ago, and think about where he was or is now that he has this new agent. Think about how things have changed. I can't tell how much is a negotiation. I can't tell how much of this is from the agent, and I can't tell how much of it is JT genuinely himself. But what I can tell is that the timing of him doing this was clearly ridiculous, okay? He has absolutely no leverage from a market standpoint. He is not going to get what he wants from the Colts. He is not going to get what he wants if he were to get traded to another team. The Colts don't have to trade him, right? And I'm not bringing you news. Plenty of people are bringing this to you, but I just want to speak to it. They don't have to trade him. If they were to put him on the non-injury related, physically unable to perform list, he literally would end up in a worse spot than he is right now. And I would assume if no one has told him, rather, I would assume he knows that, but if no one has told him that, someone should. I mean, the Colts can defer his $4.3 million this year and make him not eligible till next year. So this is not doing him any favors whatsoever. And if he were to get traded, not for anything, who in Lord's name is going to pay him what he wants? Now, I don't know exactly what his agent is asking for. My guess is something in the range of $15 million a season. I have no sources on that, but that would make him the highest paid running back of all time. I assume with the way player negotiations go in today's NFL, each next guy that gets paid is looking to be the next highest paid. So I assume that's around what his agent is asking for. And that's obviously ridiculous given the circumstances right now. But now that I have crapped on Jonathan Taylor, for all of you that have just turned on him, like he's never done anything for this team and isn't one of the greatest offensive weapons we have seen on this team in the past 20 years, all right? Now that that's done, I want to talk about where Jim Irsay is wrong because you guys are not talking about this, and many in Colts media are not talking about this. Some of this, yes, but not all of it, because this is where things get complicated, and I can't believe so many of you fell for the way that Jim Irsay tried to spin this narrative. I think you've been duped, but I'm not going to let Jim Irsay get off the hook. So let me just talk about this right now. The tweeting, obviously, by Jim Irsay is what everyone's talking about. The tweeting is outrageous. The lack of awareness of this situation, and you could sit there and say that tweet wasn't directly about Jonathan Taylor all you want. That's fine. clearly you would have to know that even if you didn't say Jonathan Taylor's name, in tweeting out the things that Jim Irsay has tweeted out, even if you're naive enough to think it's not about Taylor, you know the implications and you know Taylor's going to see that and you know how it's going to be taken. So intentions aside, even though I believe I know very well what his intentions were, intentions aside, you have to be aware of that fact. And Jim Irsay, which I assume he was aware of that fact, just basically opted not to care about that fact. So for me, that doesn't sit well, right? And he talks about this idea of bad faith, good faith, all of these things. No one was talking about good and bad faith when JT clearly outperformed his contract in 2021. It wasn't about the fact that he was being underpaid. No one went into last season saying, man, this guy was so good for us last year. We would have literally been winless without him, with that bum Carson Wentz at quarterback. Maybe we should give him more. There was no good faith at that time, okay? I'm not saying it's in bad faith to not pay him if he doesn't ask, but let's not pretend everything's going on in good faith. Let's not forget, Andrew Luck, who, unlike Jonathan Taylor, decided to literally quit on this team in the face of injury. And I don't say that to be rude, and I've never said that outright about Andrew Luck because I think it's a little more complex than that. But in terms of what the result was for Indianapolis, Andrew Luck quit on the team, okay? Andrew Luck quit, and Jim Irsay and the Colts organization decided to let him keep all of the money, which is way more money than what's on the table for JT right now. I understand he's a quarterback. I understand he's Luck, but you have a guy telling you, hey, I'm not going to sacrifice my body for you right now, and you give him the money anyway. And now here's JT, and all of a sudden we're talking about bad faith, good faith, the market, right? So this is not just all about the dollars and cents or preserving them, right? Clearly, there's a little something going on. You have a guy in Jim Irsay that has his fingerprints over every piece of drama that this team has dealt with short of Andrew Luck's retirement. Do you not remember at the end of the season with Carson Wentz, who was it that drove Carson Wentz out of town? Who was it that drove Carson Wentz out of town? That was Jim Irsay, right? And obviously we go into that offseason and things go how they go. Now, am I mad that technically Carson Wentz was driven out of town? No, absolutely not. I hated Carson Wentz. That's just the truth of the matter. But at the same time, there's a case of Jim Irsay slipping himself in, causing a little bit of dysfunction, right? That was obviously bizarre, the way that went down. Last year, who was it that benched benched Matt Ryan? That wasn't Frank Reich's decision. Clearly, it wasn't the locker room's decision because we saw how things played out after that. Don't forget, with Matt Ryan, technically the team was still like around 500, as bad as it looked, okay? That was the truth. In terms of wins and losses, the Colts were alive and well, and that locker room clearly supported Matt Ryan. Jim Irsay went in and benched him. They lost the entire locker room. And then on top of that, goes ahead and fires Frank Reich mid-season for a decision that Jim Irsay himself made, and benching Matt Ryan says, oh, we're playing like crap. Frank Reich, you're fired. Jim, that was your move. And then you went and hired Jeff Saturday. And obviously, whether that was a tank job or not, that brought a lot of attention on this team. So to sit here and try to absolve Jim Irsay of all of this, or just leave him out of it and just make it like he's the good guy here, I think is ridiculous. I can't believe he's tricked you all. Everyone wants to talk about Jonathan Taylor and how he's making enough money. Jim Irsay spent almost $1 million on a piano in a couple years ago, the Elton John piano. Go ahead and look it up, okay? I have never seen so many people take the side of a man with this much money and turn on the littler guy. Now, I know this is millionaires fighting with millionaires. I understand this. All I'm saying is that it's not just JT making the money here, okay? Jim Irsay is making the money here. The Colts are always over the cap every single season. When I say over the cap, I mean they leave money on the table constantly, okay? And if the goal is to win games and if the goal is to put the best team possible together, ideally as fans, we would like to see that come in the form of you spending some money. And while Ballard takes all of the flack for not spending it, don't forget who's writing the checks and making sure that this goes on. It's Jim Irsay, okay? It's not Chris Ballard. I don't want you guys to lose sight of that because I feel like everyone's letting Jim Irsay off the hook here. And I don't think it's fair because clearly we're seeing a guy who is making a few bad decisions, a few emotional decisions. I mean, can you concede that? Okay. So that right there is where Jim Irsay is wrong. But the reality is that both of these dudes are being petty. Okay. So now that I've gotten those two out of the way, and I'm sure I've missed something that someone's going to point out, I'll happily respond to you if you feel like I missed something there. But again, I just wanted to point out, this isn't just JT being a bad guy. There's another side to this. And again, I have an entrepreneurial spirit. I hate entitlement. It's one of my least favorite traits in a person. I almost always take the employer's side over an employee in these types of disputes because they're the one writing the check. Ultimately, that guy wouldn't have the opportunity to make the money without the owner taking the upfront risk. He always gets paid last, the owner. I understand all of these things. I'm like a business guy. I'm a business-minded guy. I'm not a business guy. It's ridiculous. I'm a business-minded guy, and I do tend to always sympathize with the guy writing the checks, okay? So I want you to understand that as I say these things. But this is a little bit shallow of us as a fan base when we're talking about Jonathan Taylor, because running back pay is a real issue. Now, you could talk about the reality of the situation all you want, okay? And for the people who watched my last video, I said something along the lines of paying Jonathan Taylor 2 years, $50 million. That had nothing to do with the reality of the situation. That was me explaining what I think things should be, okay? That wasn't my actual solution. I'll give you my actual solution momentarily, but that was not my actual solution. That was me saying I think that's what things should be like money aside, market aside, okay? I want to bring something up for you here because we talk about, oh, it's what the market dictates. You don't want to overpay them, okay? Here's a hypothetical for you. You go ahead, you slip on a banana peel at home, okay? You take an ambulance or your family drives you to the emergency room, okay? They spend an hour talking to you, and then they put like a wrap on your, what the heck is it called? They put like a brace on your ankle. You spend an hour there. They send you a bill for $5,000 after that 1 hour that you were there at the emergency room off of a freak accident in your home. Does anybody in that moment say, oh, yeah, that $5,000 is totally justified because that's what the market dictates? No, nobody says that. They say that is fucked up. And whether or not that's the reality of the situation is besides the point. We're allowed to talk about how that's not cool, right? That's all I'm doing here. And I want to go back to that Tony Dungy tweet because he, again, and I'll read it one more time. Edgar and James worth every penny that the Cardinals paid him. We went with Joseph Adai. Dominic Rhodes got 1,700 rushing yards. Yada, yada, yada. We used that money to sign Reggie Wayne, Dallas Clark to long-term deals. Economic reality, okay? That was after a season when Edgar and James was due to get re-signed, if I'm not mistaken. That seems about right. Tell me if I'm wrong. I may be. I was a young man. Okay, that is what it is. But the point is that does not explain this season. Okay, again, nobody at all talked about the economic reality, or no one talked about the market and how, it's just what the market dictates, and how, or rather, no one was talking about JT being underpaid. Excuse me, I just lost track of my thought. No one was talking about JT being underpaid, right? When he ran for 1,800 yards. So I'm going to put aside the overpay thing because I think it's utterly ridiculous. When you have a guy like Devontae Parker, who is just some ancillary receiver in this league, and the Patriots give him a 3-year, $33 million contract, okay? And that is like the max a running back is going to get on a franchise tag. I don't care if it's a passing league. To me, that is completely absurd. It's completely bogus, and it's completely out of line, and I think it's a problem, okay? So here's my thing. When Dungy talks about Edgar and James and how they were able to get all those things done, have the Colts at all, now, and I don't know, this is possible, so if they have, then obviously this is completely out of bounds. Have the Colts just offered to bump his pay this season? We have, what, $18 million in cap. The biggest signing we've made is some freaking sixth-string corner from Kansas City that I've never heard of in my entire life. This is money we clearly do not plan on using. If Jim Irsay says we need Jonathan Taylor, particularly in the context of Anthony Richardson being comfortable and ingratiating himself into this offense and giving him the best possible chance to succeed, Jim Irsay himself said we need Jonathan Taylor to be here this season. If that is true for this season, forget the extension. Why not put your money where your mouth is? Why can't we bump his pay? Now, I'm going to think of my natural objection is that it's possible that it opens up a can of worms with some other guys that are due for an extension, maybe going forward. I understand this isn't normal business practice, but when you talk about what Jonathan Taylor has done for this team, which you should not be able to dismiss, any of you that are, I think, are kind of weird. When you talk about what Jonathan Taylor has done for this team, what he has meant to this city in the past couple years, why couldn't we bump him up to what Saquon is making this year? Now, if that's been offered and Jonathan Taylor's idiot of an agent has just let that slip through the cracks and not work, even though that would clearly be a massive win from a negotiation standpoint, right? Because then you could, make the franchise tag money this season, next season, and the season after that, right? If that has been offered, I've got nothing else for you. But for me, that would be my solution. And why isn't anyone talking about that is something that the Colts should do. If Taylor, of course, is willing to settle on that. Because for me, if we want to talk about good faith, is that not good faith? I mean, business is not just about dollars and cents. I know everyone thinks business, money. It's not just about that, okay? It's about acting in good faith, and it's about negotiating, and it's about creating good relationships. And when you look at this situation, this right here does not make any player not playing for the Colts, that's a possible guy we sign in the future, want to play here. That's just the fact of the matter, and that is a part of business. But I think we could all agree that if nothing else, these two are being petty, and this should be getting handled behind closed doors, and we shouldn't all have to be talking about this, and this should not be what we are subjected to as we go into one of the most exciting seasons the Colts have had in years. These two are tearing us down and giving us a distraction like we need, like a hole in the head, okay? So they got to sort this thing out behind closed doors. And with that, that's probably everything I have to say for this episode. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So until next time, my name is Justin. This right here was the Riding the Bench Colts cast. Of course, let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time, go Colts.